Caleb Calhoun has analytical proof that the loss to Arkansas wasn't that bad. Now, I've spent the beginning of the show telling you that you shouldn't overreact because there's a college football playoff spot still within your grasp. But I don't know where Caleb's going here. Bizarro World, maybe, if you're familiar with Superman Bizarro. Me like Caleb, B don't know what Caleb talking about. That's Bizarro Superman impression for those that don't know. All right, so and I agree with what Orange Blood said. Margin for error is so small. Bama and UGA are most likely risk for losses. Losing to Arkansas significantly reduces playoff chances. I got you. But Caleb's going to tell us analytically why the loss is not that significant. All right, Caleb, good luck, because to me, even though I think Tennessee's fan base has overreacted in a negative fashion, it looks like a pretty darn ugly loss to me. Please click that thumbs up button. Go, Caleb.
Okay, so let's first off just take before I go analytically, let's just take the broad forest for the trees moment. And we kind of brought this up in the first segment, so we'll bring it up now. In what era of SEC football in history does losing a close road game to an SEC team with a winning record when you have a redshirt freshman starting at quarterback become cause for concern?
Throughout my life, and Kentucky has gotten better, but throughout my life, other than Kentucky and Vanderbilt, that should be totally within the realm of possibility for most every team. As a matter of fact, I can recall times when Stetson Bennett wasn't a very good Georgia quarterback, and they struggled on the road as well. Alabama had issues with their offense before Lane Kiffin took over and changed it up there. So I think, yes, every program with a young quarterback and unproven offense, which is what it turned out to be, can lose to any SEC opponent not named Vanderbilt and Kentucky. And now that's up for grabs.
All right. Now I'm going to go into the numbers of the ESPN FPI breakdown in a second, but let me also start with this. Based on SP Plus, FBI, the analytical data of home versus road games, Nick Saban won 2 national championships with losses worse than Tennessee's loss to Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And it was before the college football playoff. It was in the BCS era. And I'm going to give you guys 2. 2003, when he was at LSU. Do you remember when he lost at home to Ron Zook's Florida Gators?
Mm-hmm.
Dave, let's be honest. That Zook Florida team at home, or this Arkansas team on the road, when you factor in home road, the Zook Florida team at home was a worse loss. By far. Not even close.
Okay, I think you're right, but let's if Arkansas loses the rest of their games, then it looks a lot different. But I think you're right.
Yes. The one that's more debatable, but FPI, again, factors in home and road. So the one that you could say is more debatable, but if you actually break it down analytically, it's not, is Texas A&M 2012, the Johnny football game. That actually is technically a worse loss for Alabama than Tennessee's loss at Arkansas is. Remember, guys, Arkansas is 2 plays away from being undefeated. They're 2 plays away from being 6-0 right now. Okay, this is a very, very dangerous team. So let me just break down some numbers for you real quick. Arkansas is number 24 in the FPI strength of record. Number 24 in the FPI overall. Their strength of record is number 28. Their strength of record is number 15. And they were, again, 2 plays away from being undefeated. Tennessee has the number 19 ranked strength of record. Now their strength of schedule is number 51. Dave, you ready for this?
Yes.
Nobody with a higher strength of schedule than Tennessee is undefeated right now. The top 52 toughest schedules in football. Every team playing in the top 52 is undefeated. The highest ranked strength of schedule for an undefeated team right now is BYU at number 53. The top 4 teams in the AP poll, Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, and I believe Penn State, are in the bottom 10 in the nation in strength of schedule right now. Those 4 teams.
That's crazy.
Say all of that one more time because it bears repeating.
The top 4, okay. No team with a higher strength of schedule than Tennessee is undefeated this year. No team, not one. The top 4 teams in the AP poll right now, as we speak, are in the bottom 10 in the nation in strength of schedule. And what this is telling us is that two things. One, just based on the fundamentals and history, even if it was the BCS era, this loss to Arkansas would not be cause to panic, quite honestly, because it's not a bad loss when you break it down. There's nothing bad about losing to a team with a winning record in the SEC on the road when that team is 2 plays away from being undefeated. The other point about this is that, again, there's the expanded playoff, but there's so much parity now in college football, and that is more clear than there's ever been before.
Okay. Who was one of the first people to say that?
That was you. You are right. You brought that up.
I think the level of play has gone up in college football, and I think that a 10-2 season is going to be incredible from now on. Whereas you might have looked at that if you're Alabama or Georgia and go, oh man, I lost 2 games. I think everybody, there were so many players that I covered. I'm not going to name the player, but I remember one time we were doing a remote and the guy didn't play a lot as much as he should have because of running backs in front of him. You can probably guess who I'm talking about. And I remember doing a remote with him. And I said, if you could change anything about your college career, and this is surrounded by Tennessee fans at a liquor store of all places. And they probably wanted to break into that Jim Beam after he said this. And I said, if you could change anything about your college career, what would it be? He goes, well, I wouldn't come to Tennessee. Okay. Well, there were so many resentful players that I covered that I go back to Kelly Washington. Everybody thinks he was a cancer on that team. Guys, there were 3 other players worse. And there were that many resentful players because they thought they should get paid and they were trapped in what should be an absolutely illegal contract in which you can tell an 18-year-old that you're tied to this letter of intent for 5 years, but we only have to adhere to it for 1 year, which is what it was. And the fact that if they transferred, a coach could say you have to pay your own way because you're not released. Can you imagine back in the days when, let's say, Flojo, okay? I'm just taking an amateur athlete before we got all the money involved. But if you said, oh, you did something wrong, so we're going to give you a financial penalty, that's what they did. They were so tied they couldn't go anywhere. So, Caleb, I don't think you have that half dozen to a dozen resentful players on each and every team, not just Tennessee. That just happens to be who I covered. And I think they also realize that if they play hard and if they have success, there'll be more cash there for them. So, yes, I think the margin of error is much closer game to game. And I would not be surprised if the SEC does not have a one-loss team. If everybody's 10-2. Now that'll be mass chaos, which will be fun for all of us. But I think it's that close. I mean, for the love of all that's holy, guys, Vanderbilt just beat Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny enough you bring this up about Vanderbilt. What did they do? They hired Jerry Kill, who's just a great offensive mind, and they got their quarterback, Diego Pavia, out of New Mexico State. Dave, in any other era, would Vanderbilt have been able to just go randomly find their quarterback to fit this one system?
No.
Yeah.
So you're able to address needs. Now, we could argue that with Lance Hurd, but you're able to address needs and be a better football program because of NIL and because of the transfer portal. And if you like watching great football, the football is better. But just you need to take that whole notion of, oh, it's time to run the table. Caleb, I'll just go ahead and go on record. I don't think that as long as you and I are working together, there will be a team that actually goes undefeated, that goes 12, 13, 14, 15. It would be 16-0.
Let's see. 12,
they'd
you have to win your conference title. 16-0. Yeah, you have to go 16-0.
Yeah. Tennessee had some coaches saying before the season they wanted to go 17-0. That would be very difficult because you'd have to play in your conference championship game
and not get a first round bye.
And I don't know, scrimmage yourself. I don't know how that would work. But anyway, that's what they were saying. But the point is, I'll ask you, are we going to see a team go undefeated, run the table, like Georgia did, or because of the college football playoff and because of NIL, transfer portal, all that stuff, are those days behind us? Because I'll go ahead and tell you, I think they are.
Oh, I think they absolutely are. Basically, what you're saying, Dave, is we're going to see what we saw in the 2007 season. Do you remember the wild ride of 2007 where nobody wanted to be number 1 or number 2 and they kept losing? And that's how Les Miles got his team to the national title with 2 losses, because Les Miles said, and I quote, "We are the only team in the nation to be undefeated in regulation." And I mean, he was right because they lost both their games in overtime and the voters bought them. They're like, hey, he's got a point. They put him in the national title game. And I mean, we're kind of hitting that era again. What did Dave and I tell you guys last week? What did we say? We said on Friday, we said, watch out. Chaos is coming. Because what did we say? And Josh Pate said it on Thursday before, so I want to give him credit. We both looked at the slate of games. There was one top 25 game that week. It was Missouri and Texas A&M, and everybody knew Texas A&M was going to blow them out because Missouri was the most fraudulent undefeated team ever. But we looked at a bunch of other teams, and there were about 7 of them. 7 top 15 teams were playing unranked teams on the road that all had winning records and that all were a player or 2 away from being undefeated. I mean, Miami and Cal, again, that was my super dog. Miami did win, but barely. Cal's 1 play away from being undefeated. Vanderbilt, you can say what you want, but Alabama at Vanderbilt, they lost to Georgia State and Missouri, both on the last play. They could easily be undefeated. Tennessee played Arkansas. Arkansas could easily be undefeated right now. Again, 2 plays away from being undefeated. And you could go down the list and that was happening. And what we're saying is, this was always true with college football. It's more true than ever, Dave. You're not necessarily what your record says anymore in college football. And what I mean by that is, I think more than ever, and this has always been true in the NFL, right? In the NFL, if it's like week 12 or something, a 6-5 team plays a 10-1 team, there may not be that much of a gap between the two. It could just be the ball bounced a couple of different ways.
Let me ask you this too. If Arkansas doesn't have Addison Nichols and Danico Slaughter because of the transfer portal and or NIL, depending on what shook down there, what's the score of that game and who wins? Portions of the program brought to you by Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Tennessee dog walks Arkansas if they don't have Danico Slaughter, who provides insight into Tennessee's offense. Same thing for Addison Nichols. Plus, they wouldn't have 2 starters. That's because of NIL. That's because of the transfer portal. That's drawing teams closer together. Your new goal is not to go undefeated like in 1998. Your new goal is to win 10 games and hope the chips fall in your favor.
Yeah, you're right. And I'll take it a step further, Dave. I'm wondering if 10 games isn't enough to even get a bye now. I mean, I'm starting to look at the slate, and with the exception of Ohio State, don't you think it's possible every single team in college football has 2 losses this year before the conference championship week?
If you'll let me include the conference championship week, I'm 100% on board. I'm like 70% on board before that week.
Okay.
But I could easily see let's say Georgia and Alabama in a rematch, and I could see Georgia winning that game. So yeah, I think or Alabama and Vanderbilt in a rematch. It's that close. I'm telling you, it's very, very close.
I'm with you, and you may know this. I didn't know that General Ursus points it out. So Bill Parcells is the one who says we are what our record says. I thought he was a smart coach, because that's one of the dumbest things you could ever say in football is that you are what your record says, and because that's just not the way football works.
Yeah, but I understand what he's saying.
But it's and one of the things that's becoming more true, and we'll say this about Oklahoma with Tennessee, the other phrase that I say is becoming more and more true. And we're going to I think I'm going to do a better job of this. We did a pretty good job of it, actually, because we were sounding the alarm with Oklahoma. But don't accept things in a win that you wouldn't accept in a loss. Right, Dave? Mm-hmm. And I think that Tennessee maybe accepted some of the offensive issues they had at Oklahoma because they won that game. I mean, that's rule number one in the NFL, isn't it? As a Cowboy fan, that's rule number, I mean, the Cowboys are the worst at that, right? They look past their flaws and wins, don't they?